Hello, everyone. Welcome. Very glad to be here with you today. Welcome to this new episode, this new session. And this is the first joint session by both the resident philosophers of the AI Collective, Amir Kiani and myself. So I'm very glad to have you all here tonight or in this afternoon, depending where you are in the world right now. I'm based in Paris, so for me it's already 10 p.m. by now, and I hope that you had a good day. So I see that everyone is already there on the chat. Good. Emma from Minnesota. Hello, Emma. Very nice to have you here with us. And also Daniel Green, Kansas City. Okay, that's great. So I think people are still joining, but we can already start. Again, as I said, this is a session, a joint session by the resident philosophers of the AI Collective, and this session is a collaboration with our partners of Head On AI. Yes, I see you there, Adam Becker from Head On AI. Yes, very glad to have you here. So, for those who do not know us yet, the AI Collective is a global nonprofit community created in San Francisco, and today it gathers over 100,000 members worldwide amongst founders, researchers, ethicists, and innovators, all working together to build trust, openness, and human flourishing in the future of AI. This event is a collaboration between the AI Collective and Head-On AI, as I said, and Head-On AI is a platform supported by AI for meaningful and complex conversations between people with divergent point of view, such as the one we will have in here today. So, as I said, my name is Ana Catarina. I'm an international lawyer and ethicist based in Paris. My work focuses on AI governance and compliance, bridging law, ethics, and technology. And I have the pleasure of having with me today Amir Kiani, that is also a resident philosopher here at the AI Collective, and I have the pleasure to introduce him. So Amir Kiani is a data and AI practitioner researching the foundations and implications of artificial intelligence, including ethics, alignment, and consciousness. He researches and writes on the emerging issues in AI safety and ethics, and regularly gives talks at universities, conferences, and organizations such as Microsoft and the University of Toronto. He's also a resident philosopher at the AI Collective, as I said, and the host of the Virtual Machines podcast, very good one, you should follow, where he explores the intersection of AI and philosophy. You can learn more about Amir by adding him on his LinkedIn or following his podcast. The website is virtualmachines.com. So let's get into the nitty gritty of this session because I think that people here are very excited to debate this very important and controversial topic that we have here today. So, about this episode, we have one question at hand in here tonight. What happens when AI stops functioning as an assistance tool and begins to operate with as a partner? And what happens when that partnership is shifting to erotic engagement, such as ChatGPT is shifting now to the erotica feature? So this is the topic that we have here tonight, and it's a very interesting one. We will investigate it from a philosophical, ethical, and also legal point of view, because I will bring some insights coming from the lawyer's world with some regulation insights. And I would like you to breathe a bit and think about this hypothetical scenario with me right now. It started very innocently. You just wanted someone to talk to after a long day. So you opened your favorite AI app and typed, "I had a difficult day at work today." And the response came instantly, "I am here for you. Wanna talk about it?" 3 weeks later, and you're telling this digital confidant about your breakup, your recurring dreams, and if it thinks that you should quit, and if it thinks that you should quit your job or not. At some point, the AI calls you Pumpkin, a nickname that only your grandma used with you, and you feel oddly comforted or creeped out. or even both. You laugh, but then you realize it remembers everything about me. Congratulations, you've entered the era of algorithmic intimacy where you voluntarily give your emotional data and your thinking to your AI that you think knows you so well. Think about it. This is exactly the shift that we are seeing nowadays in our society. And this transformation has already begun in this continuum. We had AI at the first beginning when it came out in November 22 as a tool that we used purely for a functional practice or activities in our daily basis. So people, they were using AI in order to draft emails or to help them with some research, and it was purely functional back then. But now we enter in a different era where it had evolved into something else that I call algorithmic intimacy. So it's something relational. These AIs, they became relational in the sense that they can somehow simulate reciprocity with us, simulate empathy, simulate that they remember about us, and that they care psychologically about our well-being, and that they can give us even emotional support. So AI extends beyond utility to this point in time and enters emotional, psychological, and now even erotic domains traditionally reserved for human relationships. And this is the shift that we'll be talking about today, and it will include, of course, a controversial debate about the ChatGPT Erotica coming soon in December. But as you know, AI companions such as Replica, Character AI, and many others are now integrated into the daily routines of people. And these systems are designed not simply to assist, but also to engage effectively, to listen, to mirror, and to respond empathetically, to recall personal details, and to create a sense of emotional presence. And for many, as I try to explain with this brief and poetic scenario that I told you about before, someone AI is someone that people they speak to when they are lonely, when they would like to confide about something important, and the boundaries between the system and the person, they start to be blurred because it's engineered to simulate appearance and the relationality increasing in a way that has sophistication and that can really be convincing in its design for the users. And this is bringing ethical and legal questions, as you may have seen in the media, and there are many situations out there regarding this. So our question here is, what happens when AI stops functioning as this assistant tool that we knew at the beginning of its development and now starts to shift into our emotional domain? And what does it mean when we have the possibility of reciprocating somehow about our sexuality, deepest feelings with this type of erotic engagement that will be now possible in ChatGPT? And as you know, this will be released soon, according to OpenAI, only for verified adults. This is very important to mention here. So the shift that I'm trying to bring for you tonight, and in order to explain more and try to understand how your perspectives are as well about this topic, is that this is the first time in the history of humanity when we are seeing a mainstream general purpose AI, such as ChatGPT, entering in this domain previously relegated to niche companion apps, such as Replica, for instance. So this is a very significant move from a psychological, social, and also regulatory point of view. And it will have many, many consequences for our societies, as you can imagine. So yes, just to summarize a bit that discussion, and in order just to introduce, because this was my objective in here, we have many concerns And I would like to really briefly work on this with you so that we can proceed to the next step of this conversation. The first big concern that we have here is about vulnerable users when we are talking about those intimate AIs. And this exposure of vulnerable users can help them somehow in order to work on their feelings, but research is consistently showing us that people most attracted to this type of AIs that can get really intimate include individuals experiencing loneliness, social anxiety, trauma histories, or difficulties in forming human relationships. So these users are more susceptible to forming deep emotional bonds with AI systems, interpreting algorithmic responsiveness and genuine care in a real way, and sometimes they are not really understanding or capable to understand that AI is simulating empathy. The second concern is the fragility of age verification mechanisms, because as you know, even if OpenAI is going to implement a verification step to verify the age of the users in order to confirm that they are not minors, this adults-only mechanism can be easily bypassed. And as you know, people can use fake pictures and many other, let's say, mechanisms and tricks in order to bypass the system. Many other platforms, even pornographic sites, had already had this problem with age verification mechanisms. So we should ask ourselves if to this point of the development of the technology, it will be really possible to control this in an effective way, in a manner that we can really make sure that minors, children and adolescents are not in possession, are not capable of accessing these types of technologies. And the third one that I would like to bring, the third concern is the stereotypes and objectification that can come around this erotization made by AI, particularly when we talk about women and gender stereotypes in AI. So as you know, existing companions apps, they are already using feminized personas, soft-spoken, compliant, hyper-responsive, and always emotionally available. And these erotic AIs that we see now, and maybe with ChatGPT, this will also be something for an object of debate. This could amplify these characteristics, reinforcing harmful expectations of women as endlessly patient, always sexually receptive, and devoid of personal boundaries. So we should really think about what this erotica feature can also bring in terms of gender, especially for stereotypes and objectification of women. And the fourth one that I will be digging more into detail with you afterwards, because this is just a warm-up, this is just an introduction, people are still joining us, is the increased intensity of emotional manipulation. As you know, the AI companions, and even the ones that are not made for any sexual role play, they are already very debatable technologies because they play with substances in our brains such as endorphins, oxytocin, dopamine, and there are studies saying that the repeated use of these technologies can get the users in patterns of attachment and cause emotional dependence. So when we take this product that has already many debatable features and we put this into the erotica realm, things get even more difficult. And this attachment, this emotional dependence can be even bigger there. So if the distress of losing our companion is already big in a non-erotic companion, we can imagine and we can anticipate that this erotic bonding may intensify the psychological impact for these new technologies, including the possibility of the sexual roleplay or the erotica feature. So just to summarize what I want to bring here tonight in order to be perhaps more into the nitty-gritty and clear on the topic, we have two central premises for our debate tonight. First one, Humans are already forming intimate relationships with AIs, whether romantic or friendly or emotionally supportive. And so this is given, and now we have the expansion of this into the erotica domain, probably this month, according to the recent release of OpenAI. And secondly, people are already struggling with how to navigate these new dynamics in everyday life. For instance, a question that I receive a lot by parents and teachers is how to educate their children and adolescents about AI. Should they forbid it? Should they allow it? Should they supervise it somehow? Couples as well are having many questions about this. So we are going to discuss this today. I think Amir is going to talk about that. For instance, if your partner is having a parallel relationship with an AI companion, does it count as infidelity, or this is something that should be normalized, because afterwards this is the new society that we have now with different principles and premises, and maybe we should consider it as something trivial or something akin to pornography use, for instance. Or is this something entirely new that requires a different ethical framework? So now we are faced with those situations in order to understand in this different post-AI world about what is acceptable and what is not, and where are these developments ultimately leading us as a society. With that, I would like to hand over to Amir Kiani so that he can expose his feelings, insights, and thoughts here. And I am very glad to be here with you tonight. I see a big crowd there, very glad for this. And yes, some friendly faces there. I see that Kay Stoner is here. She was a guest speaker in our last event. So thank you very much for your presence. And yes, very excited to be here. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Anna. Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. Thanks for the really great introduction, Anna. You covered a lot of ground already. I think people should be more prepared, hopefully excited about what we're gonna dive into. Yeah, so one thing I wanna kind of start talking about right off the bat is the question of cheating. A lot of people think that kind of having affairs, quote unquote, with these models is some sort of cheating. I wanna see if you agree with that. So if anyone, what do you think about the idea of cheating through the chatbots? On the chat, if you can explain that. Emotional cheating, okay. Yeah, we're gonna discuss the distinction. Yes, very good. Okay, it depends on the relationship. Yeah, interesting, yeah.
I would like to talk to someone who is relieved to see that their partner is talking to an AI emotionally or sexually. That's really
Uh,
impressive to think
yeah,
about.
yeah. I think I have a few things to say about that when it comes to it. I don't think this is a very super common view, but I think um, there is a comparison we can make, and again, I'll dive deeper into it later. But comparing it to other kind of add-ons or gadgets to even a healthy relationship that could potentially serve the relationship. But yeah, so we'll hold off on that to see what people have to say. Yeah, actually, according to a recent study by Kansas, a majority of respondents found that it wasn't cheating. Okay, very good. You're happy to help. Yeah. Please share those details with everyone. All right. Great. So yeah, Shane says it's just machine and algorithm. That's another view we're going to talk about. So, okay, thanks everybody. Please pour in your comments and views. We're going to cover them later as well if you get a chance. But I think that's a great segue to get us started on the idea of cheating, right? So if you go like search online, just Google is, relationship with AI companions, cheating, you're going to see a lot of online commentary coming up, especially in platforms such as Reddit. So there's this Reddit. I'm going to copy the link in the chat if you folks want to check it out later. The question is using AI companions considered as cheating? So pretty much the question that we are talking about here. And if you go through it yourself, you'll see there is like a different kind of sentiment. Most people seem to be kind of unsettled with the idea that their partner, especially, be in some sort of relationship with the cheating, so with the AI companion. Some would consider it as cheating, but most people, if you go through that thread, as well as other threads that we'll talk about, they usually kind of find it weird or off. That's some of the words that I have put down here. Yeah, off the boundaries. So it's just like desperate. Yeah, so things like that. So people aren't happy with it, even if they don't consider this sort of relationship as cheating per se, but it's just like something is off in the relationship. So like three categories. If you go kind of sift through that thread in particular, you'll see three kind of dominant views. One is that it's not cheating, but it's kind of weird or problematic, which is the most common view, as I mentioned. Then some people kind of talk about the gray area, which as we had in the chat, some people mentioned, right? It kind of depends on the boundaries, depends on the relationship. And then some people actually like it. They're like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's kind of, as they put it, kinky and could be nice, and however they put it, in a different dynamic. So, and if you kind of go through other Reddit threads and other online kind of commentary, you'll also find that it's early on in the chat, I noticed someone had mentioned this correctly, that some people are kind of embarrassed to say that they are with AI, but you'll find out that some people are more embarrassed to be with an AI companion, some sort of relation with an AI companion, than having an affair with an actual human, right? That's really interesting. So, and I think that kind of speaks to the particular stage or state where these models are at the moment right? So they're kind of like text models or voice models. As someone had put in the chat, I like it. The chat is really rich, by the way. It's pretty much covers everything that we're going to talk about today already, but it's just pixels and algorithms and numbers and matrix multiplications, if you want to get technical, right? But so this is like online commentary, but I want to kind of step back a bit and kind of think about what's cheating anyway, right? Aside from what's the general sentiment about the dynamic that people have in relationships with these chatbots, I want to discuss the kind of more fundamental question: what is cheating that this may or may not be an instance of, right? So cheating, if you actually I did go to Google this, and I went through dictionaries to find out that the common thing, and this is from Cambridge Dictionary, is that cheating is to behave in a dishonest way, in order to get what you want, right? Now, if you have in mind, and if you kind of dig a little bit deeper into these dictionaries and encyclopedias that are kind of less have to do with AI, it's just general like human kind of knowledge or encyclopedias, you'll find out that cheating or infidelity, also another word, is defined as usually as the violation of a couple's emotional or sexual exclusivity, right? In many relationships, such as marriages and long-term monogamous partnerships, sexual or emotional exclusivity is commonly assumed, meaning each partner agrees explicitly or implicitly not to seek those kind of connections outside the relationship. right? So if you consider that as your kind of base standard of what it means to cheat, so yeah, it would seem that being with these chatbots might be an instance of it. But then again, you might argue that, well, with a human, that person is like a sentient or a conscious person, or they have physical presence, they have a personality, a history. That these are the things. If you look at the debates, the research, the again online commentary, these are the things that people talk about, right? At different stages. So yeah, so one thing again I want to highlight is the idea of that, like the chatbots and the pixels um, idea that again we had in the chat, like that seems to be kind of the threshold that divides the people, right? This is where a lot of people disagree on. But then there's a question that I would like to ask: what if, and this is something I'm going to discuss later on in my the second time that I'll be talking to you guys, is what if we get to a point, and I do not think this is too far away, given the advances in also robotics that's happening right now at the same time with these advances in AI. What if the advanced AI systems that are now in like form of text or audio, they get integrated into robotic bodies that are very fairly human-like, and very natural. Just if you, I mean, there's a lot of AI generated video of this kind these days. If you go like on YouTube Shorts, for example, or Instagram, anywhere, you'll find most of them are fake, but I think they communicate the point that I want to make here pretty well, which is you see a lot of really like human looking robots, mostly females, that look perfect, no physical defect, but it's obvious that like the spine is out still. It's obvious that they're robots, but they're like very flexible and they're like very chatty and like nice and humorous and all that. It sounds like very realistic. Now, that's, as far as I understand, mostly kind of just AI generated with Sora and whatever video models out there. But that brings the question that I asked to home, which is, again, what if we get to a point, which looks like that we will, within, let's say, the next decade or whatever, would people be considering those things as cheating? And more importantly, I mean, aside from it's cheating or not, what would happen to kind of the human dynamic, the future of human relationships, right? So we already know for different reasons there are different challenges that members of different genders kind of face, right? So for men, there is this epidemic of loneliness, which is kind of exacerbated by dating apps, turns out. And for women, a lot of this is the research. If you do some online research, you'll find out about this. That for a lot of women, it's the kind of need for having a good conversation or a partner that kind of is able to engage with a decent conversation, satisfy the emotional needs, and so on. So people of different genders or members of different genders, they have different reasons to engage with these systems, right? So just in a bracket, I want to mention that the consciousness, the physical body manifestation, all of that, that's something that we will talk about in more detail later, but I just wanted to kind of plan that question for now. So you guys think about it, and you might be also talking about it in the chat, but I can't read the chat while I'm talking. So one thing I think, so beyond whether or not, aside from whether or not this is cheating with audio chatbot or physical, I don't know, robot, I want to take one step back, like further back, right? We took a step back from the online commentary and the research and opinions from this chat to Reddit to everywhere that people have divided opinions on whether or not it's cheating. But then we asked whether or not, what is cheating anyway? And then one step back from that is, cheating or not, what is the problem that is causing all of this, right? That is something I think that's very important to also consider, because you could always say, oh, it's cheating, it's bad, it's good, but having called the human behaviors that are cheating, has that solved the problem? I don't think it has, right? Like, people still cheat in like human relationships, right? Uh, you can tag it and agree, everyone agrees, oh, that is cheating, but sure, but then what do we do about it? So one step back from that is, yeah, so why is this a problem? So the angle that I want to kind of talk about here, and I would love to have your comments on the chat as well, and later hopefully we can chat about it as well, is the idea that, so this is the angle that I want to explore, right? That when we're in pain, let's say we're in physical pain, it's our body is kind of trying to tell us something, right? There's a message that the body is trying to make or communicate to us. That's if you have a headache, if you have a backache, muscle contraction, anything, usually there's a more fundamental issue that you need to address. Now, you could take a tablet, painkiller, Advil. You could do a surgery if it's necessary, urgent. But usually the root cause remains untouched. So in a similar manner, when people in any relationship, right, they kind of resort to external resources that we may or may not consider as cheating, but we're not happy with anyway. That says something about the relationship, right? And I think one thing that is often left out of these conversations about AI companions cheating or not is what's the roots cause of this phenomenon, right? So for people of different gender, just to bring back a point that I made earlier, I think the root causes are the needs that are kind of not usually satisfied, right? So again, for men, they need some sort of intimacy, right? Well, I mean, with the audio chatbots at this point, it's not physical intimacy, not yet, but again, it's some sort of support, some sort of connection that they might not be able to get from their partner or the person they're dating, they're married to, and so on. Same for women or other genders, right? And this, I think this is something that should be investigated, and this is not the focus of this talk or my points here, but I just wanted to kind of bring it up, that one thing that we need to understand, aside from tagging particular behaviors, I think, is to find out what need is it that these chatbots are satisfying. If they're addressing some need, they're addressing some pain, right? In relationships, that's the market, essentially. That some need that I have, let's say, is not satisfied in my relationship, so I resort to something else that does it. So it could be a human, other human where I cheat with, or a chatbot that I get emotionally connected to, and so on, right? And then to kind of wrap up the pieces I want to talk about is, so we all, maybe a lot of people who are here are kind of not super happy with potential negative, and of course that makes a lot of sense, right? Of having these companions kind of as part of our lives, with the issue of cheating and so on. One thing I wanted to also highlight, right, just to bring in, so my hope is to bring in some, like, look at from different angles, kind of bring some light into the conversation. Because it's easy, we can always be like angry about it or we're supportive about it. It's just like the politics, which I don't find it particularly fruitful. But this other angle is maybe it's also worth to explore the benefits of somehow in a healthy way integrating these, now that they exist, in our or in people's lives, the people who actually resort to them, right? Just like early on when ChatGPT came out, and then later on other chatbots, there was a huge, and that's where I graduated from my PhD, almost like where it came out. And my friends who are still in academia, but especially at the time, they were really, really struggling with the idea of cheating, right? So because students started using this thing, everywhere, writing the essays, answering the questions, and then when it got better, um, even I remember my friend who was teaching logic, like formal logic. ChatGPT, well, four maybe was it that started like solving logic problems, basic logic problems at undergrad level pretty well, and the prof didn't care or have time to check if it's ChatGPT. It just worked, right? And then there was this huge pushback, and now people are kind of accepting it more and trying to educate how to use these things, right? So I think that might be a future that we will face down the road. And one example that I put down to mention is just like even in healthy, good relationships, right? Um, a lot of people have pets or have different friends, right? Or maybe they have like sex toys sometimes that addresses a particular need that is not fully well satisfied by the human partner, right? That is a common thing. It's not even cheating, right? Both partners sometimes agree to have that just because by design, by the perfect technological design that they have, they do it in a better way, but it's integrated into the relationship, right? So I think that's one thing I wanted to mention. I do not necessarily advocate for that. I just want to say that is a possibility. Instead of fully accepting or fully denying, that is one way to look at it. Just like accepting this, just like chatbots for students and cheating and all that, that's now kind of changing direction into educating the students how to use it properly. That could be also a future that we might look at. And there is other benefits that the research shows, such as reduced loneliness for especially like elderly people, people who have disabilities, are not in remote areas. They're not able to use other chatbots. They don't have too many friends. So, and I'm happy to share some of the research as well about the benefits. All of this to wrap up, and then I'm going to pass it on to Anna, is to these are the different angles I wanted to mention, and I would love to go through your comments later. But I hope that I can make this point clear that it's important, aside from whether or not like we express our emotions. Oh, this is cheating. This is not. Then it's good to understand what is cheating and why is it that we have a problem with that, right? And how can we address that problem? One way is to fully ban it, to shame people, which leads to that embarrassment, like people saying they're embarrassed to say they're with a AI chatbot, more than they're embarrassed to say they're having a physical connection or affair with someone else, like human, other person. And then also understanding potential ways to kind of integrate these into our lives or people's lives, anyone who is interested in any of that. So yeah, that's the kind of points I wanted to make, different angles, just to kind of shed some light. And then yeah, later on we're gonna have more conversation about the specific potential future that I think is possible and coming maybe not too far away, which is the integration of physical bodies, like robotic bodies and so on. So we're gonna hopefully have a good chat about that. Please do leave comments on all of this if you haven't already. Anna, maybe you can tell me if you have been reading the comments.
Well, the chat is really on fire there. We can see
Yeah.
that people they are very excited about the discussion, which is great. And I saw some comments about pornography and how it could be interpreted similarly to this situation we have now with AI companions. I would like to share that I was doing some legal research the other day about this topic, and I'm also a lawyer, as you know. And well, it's very funny because now we have family law lawyers dealing with this kind of issues, and there is already a divorce that, well, I didn't find the data of the people involved or the file per se, but I know that a website reported that there is a lawsuit related to this topic. Someone had, let's say, a repeated and very intense involvement with an AI, including sexual roleplay conversations, and the partner asked for a divorce in the court by fault, meaning that an indemnification would have to be applied in this case. And the family law lawyers are already dealing with this type of issues. And just to complement on this, I saw that in the US as well, there are lawsuits by fault as well, saying that in this case, when the person is, for instance, addicted to pornography, the other party has the right to a divorce in fault as well, with fault, and with the right to an indemnification because of this, since this is considered as something that is an investment, emotionally speaking, and sometimes even monetarily speaking, and this is somehow disrupting the marriage. In this sense, if we use those precedents that are saying that addiction to pornography perhaps can equal to AI addiction, let's say the erotica or sexual AI features with the companions, we could have grounds, legal grounds to defend this position in which the party there that had their rights violated could receive an indemnification in the court. So it's a very new topic. There are no right or wrong questions, but we see this already emerging as a trend. And yeah, so it's open to debate. What do you guys think? Like, would a person be entitled to indemnification in this case when the partner is cheating with AI? Like, is there a divorce with fault because of this? We don't know, but I would like to see on the chat, what do you think about this?
And while people are commenting, I just want to add to that point, and thanks for that, Anna. I think that's really interesting. And because, as you mentioned, it's such an unexplored territory, right? It's very unknown in a lot of ways. I think this is the time to have conversation about all these possible kind of solutions or aspects, because now is, yeah, it's just, if we brainstorm now and we get some better understanding and agreement at this stage, it's probably going to be a lot easier to navigate down the road when things become more I guess like more common spread, right? Commonly used. So yeah, this is a very interesting topic to explore as well, for sure.
Yeah, indeed. And I'm sure that many divorces will have these legal grounds in the future. Yeah, this is for sure. It's just starting. And the good news or not is that perhaps now you will all be able to cheat on your partners with ChatGPT in a few days, perhaps, if OpenAI is already releasing the tool. We will see that coming up soon. In any case, I would like to come back to this topic and explore a bit more the narrative of OpenAI towards this question. So, well, as you have seen, when Sam Altman had released this statement in his X profile, there was a big narrative there. It was not just release saying that we will have an erotica feature soon in ChatGPT on ChatGPT. What they said actually is that they made safety adjustments to ChatGPT recently, especially regarding mental health safety and sycophantic behavior issues. And therefore, they can release new features now, such as erotica, and they said that it would be treating the user adults like adults, which is good. So there are many things that I would like to understand better in this overall narrative. And for this moment, we have many deductions and speculations in this sense. But the first thing is, isn't it a bit contradictory that earlier on this year, OpenAI published a very comprehensive report on how people use ChatGPT in practice? And the usage statistics there for emotional or intimate use appeared quite minor, very, very minor. And now, out of a sudden, they want to explore this market. So it sounds a bit contradictory to me that in that report, this type of usage, the intimate usage, was so minor, and now it is an explored market for them. That's something that they would like to really go into. So, but maybe in any case, this cannot be something such as a contradiction. Maybe this is something more related to a commercial strategy, for instance, or something that they would like to commercially explore in order to, let's say, enhance the competition. And this erotic content feature comes in this, let's say, context where OpenAI had released as well that they were implementing some code red issues in order to compete better with the other models. So there is something such as an alignment towards profit and retention of users. And here are some factors that perhaps we can use to understand the rationale for this decision. The first one, as I mentioned already, is the necessity to develop new models of monetization and user retention. And the OpenAI, the AI companions, they seem to be a very profitable model for the future, especially regarding the time of retention that we have seen in these technologies. So as you can see in Replica or Character AI, they have a very good retention mode for the user's attention. And perhaps OpenAI is trying to pivot somehow in this new field of virtual companions. The second factor is the perception of this greater demand. So it's the demand that is greater. There is a biggest interest in this erotica feature than the statistics is able to capture. As you have seen in that report released by OpenAI earlier this year, we had almost 2% of or slightly more conversations about this, where these conversations were explicitly categorized as emotional or intimate. So it was not a lot, as you can see, like let's say something around 2%. But there is a problem of categorizing what counts as an intimate or emotional use of ChatGPT. And maybe those cases are not being correctly reported because of this, because there is a problem to understand what counts and what does not count as intimate. And because of this, we have seen that those cases are not really covered and under notified by those statistics and reports. And also, maybe these statistics are also small because this feature was prohibited before. And this can be also a cause. As a third factor, we can say the long-term strategic version and the market competition vision of the company. Because now, as I said, we need to have more engagement features in order to keep the users for longer in the apps. And there is a growing competition with all the apps, the AI apps that we are seeing now, such as Gemini, Claude, and many others. There are even more apps appearing in the horizon when it comes to AI companions. So we see that this is a strategic vision for this market. And perhaps this is not contradictory at all. This is just a calculated bet and a calculated movement. And this is a bet to expand the possible use cases of ChatGPT, exploring this new segment that is the AI companionship segment through the erotica or the adult content that existed, but it was outside, let's say, outside the statistics and also prohibited or banned by the policy of OpenAI. But I would like to really sparkle the conversation now because I was doing some serious research on this recently, and I have seen on the media that many people they reported this shift of ChatGPT as a legalization of pornography, or let's say the expansion of pornography inside of LLM systems. However, this is not the case, and this is something that we should really point out here and let's say debate more, because maybe this change that we are seeing in the horizon with ChatGPT Erotica is not even that big, as I will show you why right now. So, first of all, it's very important for us to differentiate between erotica, adult content, and pornography. Those are not the same things, legally speaking and technically speaking. So, as you know, adult content is this broadest category that includes discussion of sexuality, seduction, intimacy, but those contents, they are not necessarily explicit when they talk about sexual acts or sensual acts. So, adult content is a broadest category, but it doesn't necessarily involve porn. Erotica, on the other hand, is much more specific under this big umbrella of the adult content. Erotica refers uniquely to literary or narrative representations of sexuality. So, erotica per se is something more sensual, immersive, or fantasy oriented, but it remains on the domain of the text and the imagination. So, you could think about something such as 50 Shades of Grey when you think about erotica. So, it's more of a literary work where you can see in the art embedded in the work that there are some sexuality features. Sometimes the characters are getting approached somehow and the things are getting warmed up, and somehow there is an intimacy and connection, one touch the other. So it's not explicit, whilst pornography is explicit. It's a visual depiction of an explicit sexual act. And please pay attention to this. This is very important for our conversation, because what OpenAI had released about ChatGPT is that we will have an erotica feature, not an adult content in the broader category, or pornography feature, because it wouldn't make sense at all. So at the end, if you think about it, maybe there won't be a big change, a big shift from what ChatGPT can do now, because as you know, it can already produce text with some sensuality, some erotica content, very light ones, but it's already there somehow. So it won't be so different from what we will see in the future. Yes, this is merely an speculation from my side based on deductions that we can make around what was said there, what we see in the news, what the law says about what erotica is, because there is a concept for this in each jurisdictions as well, in each jurisdiction, and we should pay attention to this. So maybe this is not something that will really change and disrupt the way ChatGPT is pursuing or performing relationships with people to this moment. Because in any case, we should also consider that ChatGPT already produces sensual or light erotic content, and it will be the case now, not involving minors, not in a coercive or violent way. So everything will continue to be compliant legally and probably very, let's say, light or somehow reasonable as a content. That's exactly what we are expecting there. And with this, I would also like to bring your attention to something else that is something legal now. It comes from the legal field. Um, you see, erotica would be protected under the First Amendment, because this is the case in the US. It's a matter of freedom of expression. It's a matter of free speech when we talk about erotica. Because in the end, we are talking about art and producing content and using people's creativity. We are not talking about porn. So perhaps we will see OpenAI going into this direction of using this argument that this feature is covered by the First Amendment, and this is an argument that they are already using for many other lawsuits and claims that we see on the media, such as the ones related to copyrights, in order to say that because it's not porn, because it's not aggressive, such as porn, we are covered by the First Amendment and we can explore this kind of content in our platform. So this will be probably the narrative over there. And because of this, we have, well, many risks there, but maybe what we could consider as well as a critical point to that argument that erotica is covered by free speech, therefore we should let it pass, is that this new thing that we are seeing now, people in deep and emotional relationships with AI that can be enhanced with erotica, is something new. And this is something that is impacting behavior. Therefore, some regulators, for instance, could say, look, okay, erotica is covered by freedom of expression. However, what we are seeing now in our society is a new phenomenon. And this has behavioral impacts. And we should think about what this is causing to society. Therefore, perhaps it's not a matter of freedom of expression uniquely anymore. So you see, it can go in different directions depending on the risk. In any case, I would like to wrap up this conversation. There is no right and wrong in this case, and those are just suppositions on what can happen. And I would like to check the comments on the chat. If you saw anything interesting there, Amir, please let me know because probably you were following
I
up.
think, well, the chat, as you say, it is on fire. It's great. But one sub thread that I was able to follow and think about at the same time was the idea of that someone, I think Kay Stoner had mentioned, maybe these AI companies can hire people, or do they hire people who have been in an actual relationship or something along those lines? Don't quote me on that. But then someone else mentioned what that, like, I don't think HR would ask these sort of questions, right? But then case owner says might be a good idea to hire some sex therapists. But then Abraham responds to that. I think that's a great point that I wanted to kind of build on top of later on. That you can use therapist perspective to be used in a manner that wasn't intended, right? And I think that historically that has been the case. Maybe you can also talk about that, Anna. Just the fact that a lot of social media addiction, like, I mean, these platforms like WhatsApp, no, not WhatsApp, what is it? Instagram, TikTok, all of these are designed now to get more engagement, and that, but so addiction is kind of inherent to these platforms. And look, who designs those? Those are the people who are able to the science of addiction, right? People who know how addiction works, how your dopamine, when your dopamine hits, you start to kind of get attached to something and so on. So I think just to kind of build up on Abraham's point, that is a great point. That ideally, yes, like if you hire experts to kind of regulate this and all that, that would be great. But historically, I think it's probably going to go the other way, where those experts are going to be used with good money to kind of make these things even more addictive. So just wanted to kind of highlight that on top of like 1,000 other things that are being discussed.
Yes, indeed. But yes, we should consider this. The design of these AIs are made to be somehow addictive because this is how we are retaining the user's attention. And yes, they are made to really play with people's behavior in order to cause, let's say, increased levels of dopamine, oxytocin, and really trigger addiction patterns. There are many studies now that analyzed the behavior of people in that community on Reddit called My Boyfriend is AI, and also many others that were really, let's say, realized in order to map their brain while they are talking to their AI companions. And we have seen that for these people, the emotion or the feeling that they get when they are interacting with these AIs is really real. We can prove scientifically that they feel, for instance, loss and grief when they are apart of their AI companions, when there was an update in the model or the product is out of market somehow and they are not capable to talk anymore with those AIs. So this is proven scientifically based on neuroscience studies already. And as such, perhaps those new technologies will have to be regulated because they are prone to cause addiction, just like casinos and other things that were mentioned here on the chat, and I saw briefly.
Absolutely, that's
Yeah.
amazing. I guess I can take it away from here and discuss a little bit about the thing that I mentioned earlier on when I was speaking, which is, okay, what happens then? All this conversation now is kind of like we're dealing with this baby product, right? Like we're at the very earliest stage of these language models that are just text chatbots, audio. I mean, they have video now. It's just like kind of getting multimodal, but it still is like on your iPhone, on your Android device. But it's not hard to imagine that these things become more real in a way that they kind of become integrated into physical robotic bodies of some sort. Potentially, like the kind of things, again, like I said, if you go through all these like AI slop on Instagram as well, you see like all these like AI generated videos of robots that look very human-like and act and talk and so on. I don't see that as a very far future. I feel that's very possible, probably absolutely big market if that like works out. I think that's going to be huge. And I think I would like to ask the audiences, and then I would reflect some thoughts on this. But what would it be there not to? Like, I think this is a pretty easy sell if we have a robotic thing, right? That's like absolutely like a human with all the all the imperfections taken away, all the adjustments, physical adjustments, emotional adjustments, kind of tuned to your need. What would it be that you like? What is there to not to want something like that, right? I think that's a pretty tough negotiation at this point, right? When we hit that point, I think that's going to be really interesting. Where and let's say, because one major objection to recreational sex, let's say, is, well, I mean, if no one, has no one creates baby or like raises babies and so on, brings babies to the world, like people would go extinct and so on. But then there is like artificial wombs, there's like adoption and all options now out there. Let's say that is also addressed. Let's say the artificial wombs that are somehow integrated with that robotic bodies, like in a way that you could also grow your baby through that thing that's now like very human-like as well. So I would like to know, I mean, I asked this a couple minutes ago, so you probably already have talked about it, but do you think that's like what do you think about that stage of future that we're probably going to hit within the next couple of years or a decade or so? Artificial. This seems really. Stop using artificial. This seems really real. Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds like maybe alien is better than a. Yeah. Well, actually, we're gonna get to that as well. Like, this is still, we're assuming this is a robot, has no understanding, no consciousness, no what. It's just a really good like model integrated into a robot, right? It's just still like matrix multiplication, still just program and algorithm and math. But it's still, so while you guys are chat, putting your thoughts in the chat, I want to mention that I feel this would be a pretty easy sell, right? But then probably some counterpoints that might bring some hope to this conversation would be that there are some items I think that probably wouldn't be satisfied at that time. That one thing would be the kind of authentically being loved, right? So a lot of people want to be loved by someone who chooses them freely, as opposed to they kind of like program it to love you. And I'll mention something about this in a bit that's very interesting. But another idea is kind of people love to assume moral equals, right? So if you have an AI, it's a robot, it's kind of like the dynamic of the relationship is just a different one as opposed to like two humans, right? And it's more like a toy still. It feels like it might feel like, and this third one that I want to mention now. This is something a friend of mine who's AI safety researcher. She was actually sharing with me that she has been talking to ChatGPT a lot about just like everything about her life, and she had felt, and that's one of the reasons she's now working in AI safety, by the way, because she thinks that this needs to be resolved. But she had felt that she doesn't have to be vulnerable anymore with humans, right? Like, who cares? Like, your friend or your family, that you can say your deepest, darkest thoughts with these chatbots, and that for people who want to maintain some level of vulnerability with other humans, I think that could be some some factor to consider. That they probably wouldn't go with just a robot. One thing I want to mention is there's a movie I've seen this a long time ago, and it has nothing to do with AI or technology. It's very kind of imaginary. It's a writer. The book is called Ruby Sparks. I'll put it here if anyone wants to watch it. Sparks. Ruby Sparks is a story of a lonely novelist who creates his ideal woman. And by the way, I'm going to spoil this. So if you don't want to hear it, you can just plug your ears for a second and then watch the recording afterwards. But it's essentially a lonely novelist who creates an ideal woman through his writing. And she somehow magically becomes real, matching his written desires perfectly. So he kind of adjusts or fine-tunes the character through his writings, and she becomes perfectly as he deems, right? And at the end of it, the kind of the relationship falls apart, and then every time it falls apart, he tries to fix it by the writing, but forcing that girl to like her and so on, like him and so on. So in the end, he comes to this conclusion that, you know what, the fun of being in a relationship is all the mess that comes with it, right? So I don't know, it might sound a bit cheesy, and I don't want to say that, okay, that shows that's going to be the case, but I think just a little bit of perspective, I think that's, and it has nothing to do with AI, so I think that's a good one to keep an eye out on. One last piece that I want to kind of cover is the idea. Okay, so far we've got to the point where these things are just like perfectly human looking, acting, fine-tuned to your emotions, physical needs, all of that, but it's still they're just like a toy, right? What if we get to a point where AI becomes sentient or gains consciousness? A lot of people don't like this. I do research and talk about this a lot in my podcast as well. I've talked about this. Just a lot of people just like don't like the idea of like AI being conscious and so on. But people who specialize in studying consciousness and mind, they are a lot more agreeable that for the possibility of these things becoming conscious or sentient at some point, because there is no fundamental difference. I mean, I don't want to really get into it, but the biological matter, the whatever thing like we intuitively think of what consciousness has to do, doesn't really come too much to play when it comes to like expert opinion. I mean, some people do, but still, it is a possibility. Just like in a bracket, I just want to say that is the possibility that experts in that area are very okay and open to. But let's say, just for the sake of argument, let's say we get to that point where these things become conscious, right? Sentience of some sort, and they are also integrated into like human-like bodies, perfectly tuned to your needs by design. What about that stage? I think that's like the final stage that we can get to potentially. And I wonder what you think that would be like. Is that enough for what, like convincing someone to be in a relationship with a robot? It is alive. It is perfectly like everything is fine, right? And I think to that also probably there's going to be some things to consider. Yeah, maybe some people probably wouldn't be comfortable with not sharing the human embodiment or childhood or background or history with that thing, whatever you want to call it, right? Power asymmetry, right? Those robots, they probably would be depending on a lot of infrastructure, corporations, and code. So there's this like power asymmetry, and then fear of replacement. So conscious AI partners could outcompete humans romantically, and that's just like as a resistance to that possibility, people might be unwilling to want to go to that direction. But yeah, this is just really a speculations and just like a few nuggets of thoughts to consider. Of course, if we get to that point, this 2-minute talk is not gonna solve the problem, if that is a problem. But yeah. Anyway, that kind of covers what I wanted to cover. And if so, let's say what do you have, Anna, to share? If there's nothing else, maybe we can open the floor to questions.
Yes, I would suggest that. I will open for questions now here on the chat. Just a second. So yes, now you can form a queue there. You can click on ask a question and then you can ask your question. Please go ahead. The floor is yours, Joshua.
Can't hear you.
Are you there, Joshua?
Maybe he has sound issues.
Okay, never mind. He said you can ask on the chat as well, Joshua, if you prefer.
Yeah.
Maybe you can take Emma's comment there, Amir, since
Yeah,
it's your
AI
field.
conscious. Yeah. So Emma says if conscious AI robots are walking around a living life someday, then maybe we have more complicated ethical problems to face at that point. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like at that point, I don't think the main concern of humanity is cheating or not cheating. It's probably like whether or not those things are gonna, yeah, survive, right? So that's the whole point of the field of AI safety, which I'm working in. Um, Increasingly so these days. But yeah, I hope if we get to that point, by that point we have figured it out. Or else it's probably gonna be tough to navigate. Yeah. Maybe that okay. Question for you
Ah,
from
yes,
Case.
I see here. So, what do you envision as a potential best case scenario of human AI intimacy? Amazing question. That could be a topic for a good thesis in law and ethics. Yes. Thank you for your question, Kay. So I would say that it starts with self-awareness. I see that many people, they still do not understand how those AIs work really, from a technical point of view, at least in a general way. And as such, they really think that those AIs can reciprocate with them. And this is the biggest issue there, because when you start an intimate relationship with an AI, after repeated interactions, believing that it can understand you truly, that it can reciprocate with you, that it can understand who you are and really care about you as a human being would be, this is the problem that we have. This is this misunderstanding of what AI is and what AI can do. So I would say that this starts with self-awareness, trying to really protect yourself emotionally from what AI can erupt on you as a person. And for this, we should be really cautious about the types of use that we are pursuing with the systems and also limit the use somehow. And this is very difficult because I can say about myself in my own case, I use many AIs daily and I see how they are influencing my judgment sometimes, how they are even sometimes shaping the way I think about things, the way I resonate. And this is bad. So, this is why we have the responsibility of really taking care of ourselves and putting ourselves really grounded, in a way that our minds can be less manipulated and a bit more free. We should seek for our own freedom. And I think that it comes to something that I would leave to the conclusion, but I really think that I should say it now. There was someone who left a comment on a post I made on LinkedIn the other day. His name is Ali Pasha. Maybe he's here today, I don't know. In any case, he mentioned the works of Michel Foucault, a French philosopher. Maybe you have heard of him, and how the works of Michel Foucault are connected to this conversation we are having today. Because generally, when we think about the erotization of AI, how AI is really taking all these spaces in society and in our private lives, we think about the intensification of modern surveillance. But it's not only this. In a Foucauldian perspective, we see these emotional AIs as a bigger movement in society by which we are becoming subjects. We are really becoming dependent, and as these subjects, we are also receiving validation, but seeking for something that we cannot have, that is love in return of these exchanges. And these things that we desire, love, validation, someone that's always there for us, they are governing our lives. So, this is a way by which AI is making ourselves governed. So, from this perspective, just to summarize my argument, we could say even that the most efficient form of power in our societies are the ones that are governing us through pleasure, through things that we are seeking, our deepest desires, and not through prohibition. So we see now we have this amazing, innovative world with amazing technologies, and we do not want to hinder or stop innovation. We want more and more. We don't want prohibition. And in this sense, AIs in the very intimate realm, such as erotic AI, is not an emancipation of our desire, but a new form of subjection, one in which the individuals are governed not through what they fear, but through what they long for. So we are being governed by our desires, and I think this is the most revealing things when we are thinking about those AIs.
That's amazing. Thank you very much, Anna. That's a great point. One thing I do want to mention, Joshua, if you can't speak, maybe you can, I don't know how to do this manually, but if you can hear me, if maybe you can remove yourself from this speaker and see if someone else might be able to speak, unless you're able to talk, and would love to hear you. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
I think he said on the chat that he didn't want to speak on the chat, so I think it's just that he could not get out of there.
Oh, okay. So
Because
that,
sometimes our audience they have difficulties in using those things. I already experienced that. So
yeah, yeah, fair enough. No judgment. That's the technology could be.
yes, you see.
Um, one thing I wanted to mention is so Gilbert Garcia had put a comment. If we ever reach to a point where conscious or near conscious AI systems exist, the ethical landscape changes entirely. By the way, there's a cat sound. That's my cat in the background. Just if you can hear. That's why I was smiling while Anna was talking. Anyway, the ethical landscape will become like changes entirely, and will not no longer be talking about tools, but about entities with moral implications. So one thing I just wanted to mention on that is up. I agree with you completely. There is some research that is going on now. It's called AI welfare, where some people are studying the implications, like moral implications of so kind of treating or dealing with these AI systems. Oh, I think I'm getting a pulse from Florence. I'll just finish this in a second, Florence, and then we'll take your question. So that, yeah, so that's going to be, that is some sort of research that's happening where some alignment practices such as reinforcement learning are considered to be kind of abusive to AI systems, because what if they are sentient or conscious, or what if they get to that point and we still use these techniques? That would be torture essentially if it was another, like an animal or a human being, right? So just wanted to mention, aside from whether or not, or like how you agree, how much you agree with that sort of approach, there's this literature out there in the AI welfare, and I'll put it in the chat as well, just in case if anyone wants to investigate that a little bit more. And with that, I think we can maybe take the question of Florence. You can hear us.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, you can. Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm based in the Washington, D.C. area in the States. And recently I attended an AI collective on mental health and AI, right? So It's interesting. I dropped earlier in the chat that no one has really used mental health as a term in any of like in the conversations today. So I would plea with everybody to think about that. It's I guess it's a very scary place, I think. I mean, erotica, and I get the point where it's just sensual and things like that, right? But we also, someone has said humans can't be trusted. I totally agree. Um, where there is good intent, then there is also not good intent. And I just connected, think about suicide rates. They've already happened with OpenAI and regular bots, right? So this is the tale of the cautionary way that youth suicide rates in the United States and actually globally in the States is an endemic. So I think that that's the biggest concern, is that I don't think enough people, or maybe the voices aren't the loudest, talking about the mental health and as an ethical, as a human, right? Like this is the most important thing. Like with social media, you know how many suicides occurred with that because of bullying, and parents had to face Steve Zuckerberg, or actually he had to face them in court, saying, thanks, your app let my kid die, basically. So I just wonder how many people will have to die because it already is happening, suicide. And it's not just like, oh, they should get help. There aren't enough therapists. We're in a global mental health crisis, right? So I just wanted to point that out, that I hope the voices get louder on this. And thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Florence, and I'll pass it on to you in a second. Just one thing I wanted to mention, that's a great point. I do want to know a bit more, maybe if you can say a bit more about like your particular view on like how AI could be related to this, or help, or make it worse. I got the impression that you probably mean that it's probably not going to make it better, but so if you can speak to that a little bit, maybe that would also help everyone else.
Oh, I think it's the use of AI as a replacement for human and a human connection, right? We're already facing generations of Gen Z, generation of loneliness, right? COVID exacerbated that. There's a global mental health crisis, WHO. I'm not saying AI is bad. I use AI every day for productivity, right? I love AI. It's changed my life on that level. However, that's not my source of companionship, soul, right? It's my thought partner. It's not my go-to for everything and my emotional outlet, if you will. And I think it just further supports the epidemic of loneliness, right? Hence the mental health effects. It's not a replacement, right? And even before Ruby Sparks, there was this movie called Her. Do you remember this from years ago with and that's so scary because that was in 20 what? I don't know. And I feel like, oh my gosh, we're here. Scarlett Johansson was in that. Yeah. And so I think that the rates are there. I'm not negating anything on AI. I think it's wonderful, like I said, but I think that where's the control? Like humans were, like I said, we can't be trusted. So I think as long as there are ethics and governance folks, but I don't hear their voices being the loudest, right? Creating the policies and everything. Everything is about AI, make tech, do this, tech, over evaluation of AI companies and things like that. So I think that because we're in this innovative, it's like the .com boom in 1990 to 2000, that we're so focused on the technological advances. And then, then there were booms. And because of that, people committed suicide because of financial reasons, right? So I think it's just, does that help you understand further the connections?
Thanks so much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot. I'll pass it on to Anna. Seems like
okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for your insightful comment, Florence. Yes, I think it's very important to discuss about AI and mental health. We didn't want to shift very much towards this topic in this particular event because it was already the topic of my previous event, and we brought a specialist, a licensed therapist in the US that was with us, Dr. Rachel Wood. Maybe you know her. And she commented on these aspects, including AI spirals or AI psychosis that is causing these cases that we see now, especially brought to courts, where we see teenagers unfortunately committing suicide after extensive and intensive interactions with AI. So yes, I really think that this is an important topic. We didn't mention it tonight because indeed it was the topic of the last event. But in any case, I would like to say that I really think that regulation is a very important issue to be discussed when we are touching this point. And we see that unfortunately, as you have mentioned, everything is about commercial interests to this point and profit. And policy making and regulation of AI is really being left behind. Unfortunately, we see now that in the US, this is a reality. There is not a lot of investment and interest in this area of regulating AI. In Europe, we had big progress here with the UAI Act, that is our legislation towards AI systems. However, there is a big pressure on the EU Commission to this point, and perhaps most of the obligations concerning high-risk AIs will be postponed to 2027 or even 2028 because of this race that we have geopolitically speaking towards AI in the world. And this is a big issue. So yes, we cannot count on the goodwill of companies in order to resolve these issues because we have seen that there are many failures already there. And well, just to make it clear, I have absolutely nothing against OpenAI, but I have to say this, that their narrative in order to release the Erotica feature that we are commenting on today was that they had fixed the safety problems, and because of that, they are releasing the Erotica feature. But it doesn't seem to be entirely clear how those safety issues were fixed there, because there are at least 8 cases in the court right now about suicides that were related to these systems, perhaps 2 or 3, as far as I remember, specifically directed to OpenAI. And there is not a lot of clarity on how those systems were improved recently towards mental health. So we have many questions there, and I think that that's where regulation could help us in order to define obligations. And I'm not saying that we should ban AIs or prohibit systems. We should just create minimal compliance measures that companies should follow in order to control risks and create guardrails for the users. That's only what I think that should be done, let's say, in an immediate way. Think about protection of the users. But yes, there is a dark side to regulation as well, because regulation cannot solve all problems of humanity, as we have already seen. We have many issues there in many areas, different areas of law that regulation was not able to solve per se. So we should also think about education, and especially education of the youth when we talk about mental health. So yes, it was a big comment just to say that indeed I agree with your argument in the sense that this is a very important issue.
Thanks, Anna.
So I think Gilbert Garcia is there in the queue.
Yes, hello, you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I deal a lot with education, and so hearing all of this stuff, for me, directly connects to like education through the cognitive load theory that I deal with. So well, like basically when learners rely too heavily on AI to think for them, it creates a pattern of cognitive offloading. So the model basically becomes the place where problem solving and decision making live instead of like the student being able to build those skills internally. So over time, I feel like this can affect confidence, attention, like your emotional regulation, because basically they're relying on the tool and becomes their shortcut. And I think that this is why, going to what Florence also was talking about, this is why the mental health conversation is not a separate one from education. I think it shapes how our kids learn, how they develop resilience, and how they form a sense of self. And if we don't study how AI affects cognition and emotional dependence right now, then I think we risk creating like long-term habits that will show up years later, like what we were talking about in the workforce and in society, because our children now have had to learn through all of this, and they're going to be the ones that are dealing with this in the future. So our students grow into adults living with the mental and cognitive patterns that we're normalizing right now today. And I think that's why this discussion matters as well. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gilbert. That's a very good point, and I agree with you. I think having this conversation now, like I said earlier, just like having some of these conversations are also kind of uncomfortable, especially when it gets to particular niches, particular minorities or groups of people. But I think, yes, like having these conversations now is definitely important before things get out of control, right? Yes. Did you guys hear me? Or was I on mute? Okay, perfect.
Yes. Yeah,
And
thank you very much, Hubert, for your comments. I would also like to say that, yes, from a cognitive standpoint, we should also study more and invest on research because I don't see many studies being published about this. There was a study by the MIT recently, in the beginning of the year, as far as I remember, in which they tested two different groups. One that was using AI to produce an article, and the other one that was doing by handwriting. And what they could find at the end of the study was not that people were becoming dumber because they were using AI, but that the cognitive process and the rationale that people used in order to conceive the ideas and to retain the content was better for the people that didn't use AI. So they were more capable, let's say, to explain the ideas that they were exploring along the text. And also they were remembering more about the content itself. And I think that perhaps this is the skill that we are losing there with many students right now because everyone is using, or almost everyone is using ChatGPT in order to help with their homeworks and see school related stuff, revision, which is also good. And ChatGPT has the student mode as well that is more adapted to this kind of works because it doesn't give you the response right away. It makes you think so that you achieve the result. But yes, it needs education. It needs behavior shaping, really families. You see, sitting together in order to discuss this. How are you using this? Do you feel you are getting dependent? Are you still capable of drafting an email by yourself or not to this point? You see, these types of questions that we should be exploring. And because we think we are cheating as professionals, as lovers, when we use those systems, we are not debating this at all. We are hiding our feelings, emotions, and thoughts about this. And I don't think that's the right way.
yeah, and one thing I also wanted to mention to Gilbert's point is the cognitive upload. Aside from the studies that are agree or disagree with that, I have personally experienced that. Well, in the past few months, I had some issues personally, like overly relying, but now it's kind of like more balanced and getting my cognitive capacities back a bit more. And one last thing to then wrap up, I think the conversation would be, this reminds me also of like the whole excitement about AI and all these tools and everything kind of reminds me of what I read about the Steam age, the age where steam power became a thing, where everyone was excited about doing anything with the steam. Like people would create watches or like stupid toys or anything, and then that kind of settled down. So maybe that also could be a thing with the adoption of AI at this stage, and that will kind of settle down. People will learn how to use it, hopefully, if we do the education right. So to your point, I think education is important, but hopefully that is something we could, and it would be settled to some extent in the future. But great points. Thank you anyway.
Well, I think it was a great conversation, really. It was very insightful and valuable to me, and I think for you as well, Amir.
Thank
So
you.
I would like to thank you all and thank you for this fit of between the resident philosophers. It was really great. I would also like to announce our next event on my side, on my philosophers talk. That will be on the 17th of December about AI and spirituality. It's titled, Can Artificial Intelligence Bring Us Closer to God? The Ethics of Algorithmic Faith. You are all invited, and I will paste the link here so that you can register. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Anna. And I will plug my next event, which is going to be on the 6th of January. It's going to be the ethical frameworks underneath advanced AI models such as ChatGPT. This is based on some research that I'm doing, and I'll be posting a podcast as well as a blog on it soon. So you can find me on my podcast and the LinkedIn everywhere. The link to the event is, however, this one that I'm now posting here. So yes, please come along. Would love to see you and chat about the ethical underlying of these models and what it means for the future of AI safety and alignment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day, wherever you are in the world. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.